Welcome to The Explainer. You know that shiny office tower downtown, or at the local strip mall, the giant warehouse on the edge of the city? They all seem so permanent, right? Just part of the landscape. But what if I told you that a lot of them are in deep, deep trouble and you can't even see it? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a hidden crisis in commercial real estate that's actually reshaping our cities from the inside out.
It's a question most of us just never think to ask. We drive by these places every day, they look as solid as ever. But behind all that glass and steel, there's this silent struggle going on. It's a combination of new pressures that could, honestly, change everything.
And this isn't your typical economic downturn. Nope. What we're seeing is this perfect storm of new risks, what people in the industry are starting to call modern hazards. And these hazards are fundamentally challenging the value, the viability, and even the whole point of these properties.
So to really get a handle on this, we've got to look at how all these different threats are connected. It's not just one single problem, it's more like a series of interconnected shocks that are creating these cracks in the very foundation of how we've valued commercial buildings for decades.
So what does this storm actually look like? Well, it's not just one thing. It's kind of like a war being fought on 4 different fronts at the exact same time. And each one is putting this immense pressure on the people who own these properties.
All right, front number 1. This is the one you can really see and feel. It's about the direct threats from our physical environment. And, this new focus on health inside our buildings, especially after the pandemic.
So you've got these sudden shocks, right? Think of a hurricane just flooding a coastal shopping center. That's millions in damage right away. But then there are these slower creeping risks, like crazy summer heat that makes older buildings without modern AC almost impossible to work in. And now, on top of all that, tenants are demanding cleaner air, healthier spaces, which adds a whole new layer of cost.
And this leads us to a really important concept, a stranded asset. This is a property that loses its value way, way ahead of schedule. Not because it's falling apart, but because the world literally changed around it. Imagine an office building in an area that's now a high-risk wildfire zone. If you can't get insurance for it anymore, poof, that multi-million-dollar asset is basically stranded.
So while the physical world is throwing new punches, so are we. The second front of the storm is all about people. The fundamental ways we live and work and shop have been completely turned upside down, and commercial buildings are really struggling to keep up. Just think about it for a second. The whole work-from-home thing has left office buildings half empty. People are moving to totally new parts of the country, changing where the demand is. And our shopping habits, all driven by e-commerce now, it's turned the retail world inside out. All of these human changes are creating this huge gap between buildings that can adapt and, well, those that can't.
And this is creating a massive split in the market, especially with offices. You've basically got 2 kinds of buildings now. On one side, you have the high-end, amenity-packed places that companies are tripping over themselves to get into. And on the other, you've got the older, more basic buildings that are just emptying out, becoming pretty much obsolete.
Okay, so you've got physical pressures and social pressures hitting all at once. And that brings us to the third front, money. For years, super low interest rates were like this great tailwind, just pushing property values up and up. Well, that has completely reversed, turning the whole financial landscape into a minefield.
The single biggest issue here is debt. For the last decade, borrowing money was so cheap, and owners took out these enormous loans. But now, those loans are coming due, and they have to be refinanced at today's much, much higher interest rates. It's like your home mortgage suddenly tripling, but on the scale of hundreds of millions of dollars. It is an absolutely unbearable squeeze.
And just look at this number, $1.5 trillion with a T. That is the amount of commercial real estate debt that needs to be paid back or refinanced in just the next couple of years. But with interest rates high and banks getting really nervous, where's all that money going to come from? The industry calls this the debt maturity wall, and it is a problem of staggering proportions.
And finally, as if all of that wasn't enough, building owners now have to get through this increasingly complex and expensive web of new rules and regulations. Let's take New York City. There's a new law there that's forcing large buildings to drastically cut their carbon emissions by 2030. And if they don't, they face these massive escalating fines. We are talking millions of dollars a year for a single building. And that's just one example of the new regulatory hurdles that are making it more expensive and complicated than ever to own property.
Okay, so we have laid out this pretty bleak perfect storm of challenges. But the story doesn't end there. Faced with this massive shockwave, the smartest people in the industry aren't panicking. They're pivoting. They're changing their entire mindset from just trying to avoid risk to actively building resilience. Right, this is the billion-dollar question for every single investor, developer, and building operator out there. When you're getting hit from four sides at once, what is the right move? Because just hiding is not an option.
So the answer isn't to try and dodge every risk. That's just impossible now. The answer is to build a whole new strategy, a new playbook that's all about adaptability, about foresight, and about being flexible enough to handle whatever comes next.
And this new playbook, it involves everyone. It starts with the investors. They can't just assume values will keep going up. They have to stress test every single assumption. And that flows down to the operators, the people managing the buildings day to day. They've got to be proactive, constantly upgrading to keep tenants happy and meet all the new rules. And it all goes back to the developers, who now have to design buildings that can change, that could be an office today, but maybe residential tomorrow.
You know, this one idea really sums up the new path to success. It's not about finding some safe asset that avoids all the problems. It's about creating a resilient asset, one that can take a hit from any direction because of its quality, its strategy, and its flexibility.
So, look, if there is one single thing to take away from all of this, it is this. In the world we live in today, the most valuable feature of any building isn't its fancy lobby or even its location, it's adaptability.
And that leads us with one final thought. This huge shockwave is forcing a total rethink of our entire built environment. It's a crisis, for sure, but it's also a catalyst. It's something that will fundamentally reshape the offices, the apartments, and the stores that make up our cities for generations to come. So, what will they become? That's the big question we're all watching now.